At Christmas dinner, with the candles still flickering and snow tapping the windows, my dad set down his fork, looked straight at me and said, "You're a burden, and you can't live with us anymore." The room froze. Even the gravy on my plate felt colder. I didn't shout or break. I just watched the man I'd carried financially for years act like he was the one cutting me loose. The next morning, I packed my things, walked downstairs, and told them I was done paying every bill in that house. And that's when my dad did something none of us expected. I used to believe Christmas softened people, that even in a house like ours, where tension lived in the walls and silence spoke louder than anyone there was, still one night a year when we tried to pretend we were a family. But that illusion shattered the moment my dad's words cut through the air. And once the shock faded, the truth settled in my chest like a stone. This wasn't sudden. This had been building for years. Our home sat on the edge of a quiet suburb, a place where every other house had lawns trimmed in perfect lines and wreaths glowing with warm lights. Ours always looked a little dimmer, bills stacked on the counter, draft sneaking in through cracked window frames, the hum of an aging heater struggling to keep up. But somehow, despite everything, I kept the lights on. Literally. I'd been paying them since I was 21. At first, it was just until your dad gets back on his feet. Then it became groceries, then water, then internet, then every single payment the house depended on. I told myself I was helping. That's what family does. I didn't realize I was carrying all of us while pretending it wasn't breaking me. Mom always had a way of smoothing things over even when she didn't mean to. "Your father's just stressed," she'd say, stirring pasta with the same tired motions, hoping the steam would hide the strain in her voice. She worked part-time at a place she never talked about, and whenever money came up, she acted like it was something she had no control over. Maybe that was how she survived, pretending she didn't see the weight being pushed onto me inch by inch. Then there was Lena, 17, sharp-eyed, always listening. She had learned early to read the room before entering it. I saw how she watched me during dinners, almost like she was waiting for someone else at the table to step up and apologize for how unfair everything was. Nobody ever did. But she understood even if she couldn't say it. Grant my father hadn't worked in years. Officially, it was because the company downsized. Unofficially, it was because he didn't want people telling him what to do. He spent his days pacing the living room TV, droning in the background, sometimes muttering about how the world didn't respect men like him anymore. But he always respected the groceries in the fridge, the warm water in the shower, the Wi-Fi that kept him entertained, all things I paid for. I thought if I kept giving, maybe one day he would see me, not as a paycheck, but as a daughter he still loved. That was the lie I lived on. And yet the night he called me a burden so casually, like the sentence had been waiting on his tongue for months, everything inside me clicked into place. This wasn't an emotional outburst. This was exactly how he saw me. The next morning, when I zipped my suitcase shut, I realized something I hadn't dared to admit before leaving wasn't the worst thing that could happen. Staying was. I didn't sleep the night after Christmas dinner. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying his voice over and over. "You're a burden. You can't live with us anymore." The words didn't echo, they carved. Each repetition felt like another reminder that the man I'd been protecting from the world didn't think I deserved a place in his home. But the strangest part wasn't the pain. It was the clarity. Around 3 a.m, I got up, wrapped a coat around myself, and walked quietly through the house. The living room smelled like pine and leftover casserole. The tree lights still blinked soft and warm, pretending nothing had happened. My father's empty plate sat on the table, crumbs, scattered like an afterthought. It looked ordinary and cruel. I noticed my mother had left her mug on the counter, tea gone cold lipstick fading on the rim. She always cleaned up before bed, not last night. That told me more than any apology she didn't bother offering. When I passed Lena's door, I heard her shift. She wasn't sleeping either. I should have felt alone, but I didn't. Not entirely. The next morning, while the house was still quiet, I began packing. Not angrily, not dramatically, just calmly, like someone finally done pretending. Each folded sweater felt like a decision. Each zipped compartment like a boundary I should have set years ago. Halfway through, Lena knocked softly. She slipped inside and shut the door behind her arms, crossed like she was bracing herself for news she already knew. "You're leaving," she whispered. "I am." She sat on the floor beside my suitcase, pulling her hoodie sleeves over her hands. He didn't mean it. I looked at her, really looked at her. 17, already carrying the emotional weight of two parents who never learned how to love softly. "Yeah," I said quietly, he did. Her eyes watered, but she didn't cry. Lena didn't like giving our parents proof they'd hurt her. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "Figure it out," I said, "starting with stopping the bills." Her head snapped up. "Zoe, they can't afford anything without you." "I know." She blinked stunned, not because she disagreed, but because she'd never heard me say something so final, so firm. For years, I'd lived in a cycle they'd take, I'd give. They'd demand, I'd deliver. And the moment I needed humanity in return, my father dropped a sentence that shattered every illusion I'd ever held about us. Leaving wasn't revenge. It was release. But the truth is, part of me wondered if they'd finally understand what I'd been carrying once they felt the weight themselves. Not because I wanted them to suffer, but because maybe consequences were the only language my parents ever understood. By noon, my suitcase stood by the door. The winter sun came through the blinds in thin stripes, lighting the dust in the air. Everything felt suspended, like the whole house was holding its breath. For the first time in years, I wasn't scared of what would happen if I said no. I was scared of what would happen if I didn't. And as I reached for the doorknob, ready to walk out of the only home I'd ever known, one truth settled deep in my chest. The real burden was never me. I left before the sun was fully up, the sky still washed in that pale winter gray that makes everything feel quieter than it really is. The house didn't stir when the door clicked behind me. No rushed footsteps, no wait, let's talk, just silence. Fitting, really. That was all they ever gave back. I drove to Jade's apartment downtown with my suitcase crammed in the back seat. Her place was small, barely enough room for two people to stand in the kitchen without brushing elbows, but the moment she opened the door, the air felt different, lighter, like the walls weren't holding a history of disappointment. "You look like you haven't slept in a year," she said, pulling me into a hug. "I probably haven't," I answered. She didn't push, didn't ask for the story right away. That was the kind of friend Jade was. She made space first, questions later. I set my suitcase beside her couch, which would be my new bed for who knew how long. It sagged in the middle, but it was freedom in fabric form. The first real shift happened around noon. My phone buzzed. Then again, then steady. 3 missed calls from Mom, 4 from Dad, 2 texts in a row from Lena. "They're freaking out. Call me." I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I made myself a cup of instant coffee in Jade's chipped mug and sat on the edge of the couch, letting the steam warm my face. The simplicity felt luxurious after years of feeling responsible for everything and everyone. By evening, they switched tactics. No more calls, just panic. Mom texted Zoe, "Something's wrong with the power. Can you check another internet is out? Water pressure is low. Please answer." I stared at the messages, a strange mixture of sadness and resolve gnawing in my chest. They were finally feeling the weight I'd been carrying alone. I typed back one sentence. "I told you I stopped paying the bills." 3 dots blinked, then vanished, then blinked again. Finally, "But why would you do that?" I almost laughed. Before I could respond, another text popped up from Lena. "Dad's losing it. He said this is your fault. He said you're punishing them." Punishing. Interesting choice of word considering I had only stepped away. They were the ones learning how cold the world got without someone shielding them from it. That night, I logged into my accounts not to check on anyone except myself. I removed my name from every remaining payment. Internet, water, electric, all the things that had quietly kept our family functioning while they pretended stability was free. The moment I clicked, confirmed something inside me, settled. A boundary finally drawn all the way through. The next morning, I woke to a different kind of alert. A notification from my bank, suspicious login attempt detected. My heart thudded once heavy, then again faster. I opened the app. 3 failed login attempts, 1 attempted password reset. I didn't need a detective to know who was behind it. My father couldn't control me anymore, so now he wanted control of my money. Jade saw my face when I walked into the kitchen. "Zoe, what happened?" I held up my phone. "They're not just panicking," I said quietly. "They're desperate. And desperate people make dangerous decisions." The moment I saw those login attempts, something in me snapped into sharp focus. Not fear, clarity. This wasn't just a family falling apart. This was what happened when people who'd leaned on you their whole lives suddenly realized the ground beneath them was gone. I changed every password I had, banking, email, streaming, everything until even I had to double-check the new ones. Then I called the bank, explained the situation, and let them lock the account so tightly no one could touch a single cent without a verification process that might as well require a retinal scan. By the time I finished, my phone buzzed again. It was Lena. Dad's yelling her text read. He said, "You sabotaged the house." Mom's crying. They don't know what to do. I stared at the message thumb hovering over the screen. I didn't want this for Lena. She was still a kid trying to survive an environment she didn't create. But every time those feelings of guilt started to rise, I reminded myself I didn't do this to them. They did this to themselves. I called her. She picked up on the first ring, whispering like she was hiding in a closet. "He's losing it," she breathed. "I think he tried to get into your accounts." "I know," I said. She cursed under her breath. Of course he did. A crash echoed behind her, something heavy, maybe a chair slamming against the floor. Her breath hitched. "I have to go," she whispered. "Please be careful." That last sentence lingered with me long after the call ended. Around 7 p.m., Jade and I were sitting on the couch watching some old sitcom, neither of us really paying attention, when there was a pounding at the door. Not a knock, a hit, hard. The kind of sound that made the walls shake. Jade muted the TV. "Zoe." My stomach dropped. I already knew. I walked slowly to the peephole, every step heavy. When I looked through, my breath caught. Grant, red-faced, jaw clenched, fists balled at his sides like he was ready to break through the wood with his bare hands. "Zoe," he shouted, "open the door." Jade stood behind me, whispering, "Do not open that." He pounded again, harder this time. "You think you can walk away? You think you can take everything after what we've done for you?" That last sentence nearly made me laugh. Done for me. What exactly? I didn't answer. I backed away and grabbed my phone. Another hit rattled the frame. "Open the door," he screamed. "I'm calling the police." I said loud enough for him to hear. "You wouldn't dare," he spat back. I dialed. The dispatcher answered calmly. 911. "What's your emergency?" "My father is trying to break into my friend's apartment," I said. "He's pounding on the door and shouting. He isn't supposed to be here." Grant must have heard me say those words because suddenly the pounding stopped. For a breath, everything went still. Then he yelled, "You ungrateful little officers are on their way," the dispatcher said. 2 minutes later, sirens echoed through the hallway. Jade counted the footsteps as they approached, firm, disciplined, decisive. Then a voice boomed. Sir stepped back from the door. More shouting. A scuffle. Then silence. When I opened the door, 2 officers were cuffing Grant. His chest heaved with rage. But when he saw me, his expression shifted not to remorse, but to hatred. So cold it made my skin prickle. "You did this," he growled. "No," I said quietly. "You did." They led him away. But the story didn't end there. The next morning, my phone buzzed again. An unknown number. I let it ring out, but a text followed. "You're going to regret this." A chill ran down my spine. The tone, the rhythm of the words, I didn't need a signature. He was out. Someone had bailed him. I drove to the old house with Jade by my side. I didn't want to go alone. Lena had texted Mom's acting weird. "You should come get your things before she does something." When we pulled into the driveway, something felt wrong immediately. My car, the one I'd left safely parked at Jade's, was sitting in front of the garage. The driver's seat pushed all the way back. The glove box open. Gas tank nearly empty. Jade whispered, "Zoe, they took your car." I stepped out of Jade's vehicle, slowly, breath tight. Mom burst out the front door the way someone might rush out to greet a friend, except her face was twisted with accusation instead of warmth. "You called the cops on your father?" she snapped. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "You stole my car," I replied, voice steady. "It was sitting there," she shouted. "Unused. We needed it. That doesn't make it yours. Every word out of her mouth was an excuse, not an explanation. I want my keys, I said. She crossed her arms. I don't have them. Then you won't mind if I call the police again. Her face faltered just a flicker, but I caught it. Without another word, she went inside. A moment later, she came back out and threw the keys at my feet, like they were trash she wanted to get rid of. Happy now, she snapped. No, I said, but I will be. Inside, Lena rushed toward me, whispering, Mom took your laptop. She pawned it. My chest tightened. Where is it? She said she needed money, Lena said. I tried to stop her. I turned to my mother. Did you pawn my laptop? She didn't look guilty. She looked annoyed. You left it here. That makes it ours. We needed the money. That was it. I pulled out my phone and dialed the police again. Her eyes widened. Zoe, don't you dare. Yes, hello, I said, as she stared at me horrified. I'd like to report stolen property. When the officers arrived, my mother tried every tactic denial tears guilt-tripping, but Lena stood beside me and told the truth. They cuffed her on the driveway. Neighbors peeked through blinds. The winter air tasted sharp and metallic. My mother pleaded, sobbed, said things no mother should say to a child trying to reclaim basic rights. I didn't move. As they placed her in the car, I felt a strange, steady calm settle inside me. Not satisfaction, not triumph, just freedom, the kind that comes when the last thread binding you to a toxic past finally snaps. I gathered the rest of my things while Lena helped quietly, her hands shaking just slightly. You're really leaving, she whispered. I already left, I said. She nodded, tears welling but not falling. I'm coming too. When I'm 18, I believed her. As Jade and I loaded the final box into her car, headlights appeared at the end of the street. A familiar silhouette stepped out. Grant. I didn't flinch. I didn't speak. I just looked at him the way someone looks at a storm rolling in, inevitable but survivable. If you come near me again, I said through the open car window, I'll file a restraining order. His jaw tightened. You think you're better than us? For the first time, I said, I know I am. We drove away, and I didn't look back. In the weeks that followed, everything that once felt tangled slowly unraveled into something clear. My mother faced the legal consequences of pawning my laptop, and for the first time, I wasn't the one cleaning up the mess. The charges weren't extreme, but they were enough to force accountability, something she'd managed to avoid my entire life. My father, furious and flailing without anyone to blame but himself, bounced between short-lived gigs and angry phone calls I never answered. I blocked every number before the voicemails could pile up. Lena kept me updated quietly, carefully. The house grew colder, literally, after the utilities shut off for good. Eventually, they couldn't keep up with the overdue payments and had to leave. They moved into a rundown apartment across town, the kind with thin walls and flickering hallway lights. Their downfall wasn't dramatic. It was slow, inevitable, and heartbreakingly predictable. Meanwhile, my life began to feel like it was actually mine. I signed a lease on a small studio with huge windows and no ghosts in the corners. I learned how quiet peace can be. And Lena, she was counting the days until she turned 18. For the first time, the future didn't feel heavy. When Lena finally turned 18 and walked out of that house for good, she called me from the bus stop, breathless and free. I drove to pick her up, and as she slid into the passenger seat, she whispered, "We made it." And for the first time, I believed her. Pain didn't define our story anymore, choice did. If you've ever had to rebuild yourself after family tried to break you, share your story below. And don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories like this one.